In our headlines on this Thursday, January 22nd, here in South Korea, the benchmark KOSPI index breaks past the 5,000 mark at the start of its session today, with investors betting on chips and cars before closing slightly below that level. Now, despite the dramatic rally in the local bourse, the country's economy grew 1.5% on year during the fourth quarter of last year, but contracted 0.3% on quarter. And South Korea's AI Basic Act goes into effect today and reportedly consolidates 19 separate AI bills into a unified framework, ranging from research funding to safety guidelines. The benchmark KOSPI index breaks past the 5,000 mark at the start of its session this morning before closing slightly below that level. Our Kim Jun-ong covers that rally and more.
South Korea's stock market has reached a historic milestone in an unexpected move that has stunned investors at home and abroad. The benchmark KOSPI climbed above the 5,000 level for the first time in its 70-year history, a mark long seen as a symbolic threshold. According to the Korea Exchange on Thursday, the index closed the session at 4,952.53. While it did not finish above 5,000, the KOSPI opened around 4,980 and surged past the milestone within just 1 minute of the opening bell. This is a blustering run, coming just 3 months after the index crossed 4,000 last October. The upswing came on the back of a strong Wall Street rally overnight. U.S. President Donald Trump backed away from a previously signaled tariff threat against European nations, triggering a sharp jump in U.S. stocks. That positive sentiment quickly spilled over into the Korean market. Leading the surge were heavyweight semiconductor stocks. Shares of Samsung Electronics gained over 4% intraday to hit a record 160,000 won, while SK Hynix also climbed to record levels. Attention is turning to what powered this rapid rally and what it signals ahead.
Since the start of the year, upward revisions to semiconductor earnings forecasts have driven chip stocks higher, helping accelerate the KOSPI's rise past the 5,000 mark. With strong earnings momentum intact, further upsides remain possible, though attention is turning to the timing of a peak in the chip cycle and potential volatility from the Trump administration.
Now that the dream of a KOSPI 5,000 era has become a reality, eyes are on how long investor optimism can keep this rally going. Kim Jun-ong, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, findings for the fourth quarter of 2025 show a quarterly economic contraction of 0.3% and an annual expansion of 1.5%. Our Ian Jin explains.
South Korea's central bank said Wednesday during a press briefing that in the October to December period of 2025, the country's economy unexpectedly dropped 0.3% from the previous quarter. The economy's first contraction in 6 months brought the country's real gross domestic product increase to 1% for 2025. The central bank had earlier forecast the fourth quarter GDP to expand 0.2% on a quarter-on-quarter basis. But figures showed that it only grew 1.5% on a year-on-year basis for Q4, down from a 1.8% expansion in Q3. Bank of Korea official Lee Dong-won said that the slowdown was mainly due to weakness in construction investment, which sank 9.9% last year, compared with a 3.3% contraction in 2024. However, exports continued to grow, while private consumption and government spending both expanded. The optimistic semiconductor exports were estimated to have contributed as much as 0.9 percentage points to last year's economic growth. Excluding construction investment, growth figures would have been greatly different for South Korea.
I mentioned that construction weighed greatly on growth. If construction investment had been neutral in terms of its contribution to growth, last year's annual growth rate would have been 2.4%.
Looking ahead at 2026, the BOK projects the economy to grow 1.8% this year on the back of ongoing high demand for semiconductors, as well as continued increases in private consumption and exports and higher government spending. This is similar to the government's latest outlook of 2% and the International Monetary Fund's slightly revised forecast of 1.9%. Ian Jin, Arirang News.
And amid the rampant presence of variables surrounding global trade and geopolitical matters, the price of gold continues to soar. And market experts believe the surge is here to stay. Our correspondent Park Jun-han was out and about.
The price of gold is skyrocketing day by day. And this is not just an upward trend that has been going on in the past few months. Even though the price of gold is rapidly rising, investors are actively buying it, an asset that does not decay, retains value, and is globally accepted.
My mother turned 60 this year, so I came to buy a gold bracelet as a commemorative gift. Gold prices have risen a lot recently, but I think they may continue to climb, so I felt it was better to buy it sooner rather than later.
The sharp rise in gold prices has been particularly evident over the last few years, and especially when U.S. President Donald Trump was inaugurated in January 2025. In the past 5 years, the price of gold has risen from around $1,852 per troy ounce to approximately $4,800. This is a 159.1% increase over that period. And when it comes to Korean won, the increase becomes far more pronounced. Over the same 5-year period, the purchase price of gold jumped from just 271,000 won per ton, or 3.75 grams, to 993,000 won. That marks a 266.4% increase. Although international gold prices have steeply risen, the hike is seen more prominently in Korea, with the dollar value against the Korean won appreciating by more than 33% in those 5 years. Alongside that, buying physical gold in Korea can add 15% to the price due to value-added tax and labor charges. Now, as you can see, this 1 kilogram gold bar I'm holding is worth more than 265 million Korean won, or roughly $180,000. The managing director of the Korea Gold Exchange, whose company produces and sells billions of dollars worth of gold and silver annually in Korea, says global uncertainty has driven the steep price hikes.
Global economic instability, ongoing wars, and uncertainty surrounding the U.S. dollar's depreciation have all combined to push gold prices sharply higher, with new issues continuing to emerge, including the situation involving Greenland just yesterday. Uncertainty is intensifying, and that upward trend appears to be gaining further momentum.
Looking ahead, long-term gold prices will be shaped by a mix of inflationary trends, interest rates, and geopolitical risks. Alongside this, global economic uncertainty and monetary policy will also be key factors affecting prices. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
In other news, President Lee Jae-myung has called for greater commitment to rooting out scam crimes. Speaking at a weekly meeting with his top aides on this Thursday, he described such transnational crimes as vicious and highly threatening, warning they can escalate to diplomatic disputes. His remarks come after the Blue House announced that a special task force established directly under the president will repatriate South Korean suspects allegedly involved in Cambodia-based scam rings on Friday morning for investigation. These suspects are believed to have swindled around 48.6 billion won, roughly $33 million, from 869 Korean victims. South Korea's AI Basic Act goes into effect today and consolidates separate AI bills into a unified framework, ranging from research funding to safety guidelines. Our Kim Do-eun tells us what this means and what industry insiders are saying.
South Korea's Framework Act on Artificial Intelligence Law has come into effect. Starting Thursday, the country becomes the first in the world to fully enforce a comprehensive legal AI regulatory framework. Passed in 2024, the law's goal is to both boost national competitiveness in AI and protect the public. One of the most critical aspects of the new rules is the high-impact AI designation. If an AI system is used in critical fields like healthcare, energy, hiring, or loan approvals, it faces strict oversight. Operators must have human managers in the loop and report their safety measures to the government. Transparency is also mandatory. Companies must now clearly label AI-generated content, including through tools like watermarking, so users know what they're looking at. The measures are now in a testing phase, so it will take some time for the results to become clear.
I mean, the big risk really is this. If the regulations are a bit too burdensome, then the question is, can the Korean government then adjust these regulations so that these AI companies are not going to be hindered with respect to the development because they're competing with other players globally, right? Like OpenAI, like other companies beyond the domestic market.
But startups and smaller firms are worried. They argue that complying with these complex safety and labeling rules requires money and manpower they just don't have. Recognizing this burden, the government is promising a soft landing. The Ministry of Science and ICT says it will suspend fines and investigations for at least 1 year.
But I think Korea being a first mover, I think is shaping the policy now going forward for a lot of countries who will now, I think, benchmark Korea's rules and see how they play out for their own regulatory systems.
They're also setting up a support desk to help companies figure out how to follow the new rules. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
On the political front, South Korea is scheduled to hold its general elections this June, and ahead of that event, the ruling Democratic Party and the Rebuilding Korea Party are exploring prospects of a merger. Our correspondent An Sung-jin has the latest.
South Korea's ruling Democratic Party has proposed a merger with the Rebuilding Korea Party ahead of general elections this June. During an emergency press conference on Thursday, the DP's chairman Jong Chung-rae proposed an outright merger, as he noted that the spirit of the time for both parties aligns.
There is no reason to contest the June 3rd local elections separately. The two parties should move forward together as one team toward the shared goal of ensuring the success of the Lee Jae-myung administration.
Chung further urged for a swift formation of a working-level team to discuss the merger. Rebuilding Korea Party Chairman Cho Guk responded an hour after the announcement.
We will carefully listen to what the public has to say and our party members to determine the best path forward.
According to insiders, the two party leaders allegedly met late afternoon on Wednesday and shared their thoughts, reaching a broad consensus. However, this announcement was reportedly shared with only a small number of insiders beforehand, calling for internal consultation within the DP. Hong Ik-pyo, Senior Secretary for Political Affairs to the President, said that he had been informed in advance. The proposal comes as the two parties face growing competition in overlapping strongholds for the general election, including the southwestern region of the country. On the same day, the DP held a policy-focused lawmakers meeting to continue its discussion on the prosecution reform set for later this year. Key issues included the dual-track structure of the Serious Crimes Investigation Agency, supplementary investigation powers, and others surrounding the reform. Under the proposed overhaul, the prosecution's existing investigative powers would be transferred to the newly established Serious Crimes Investigation Agency under the Interior Ministry, while a prosecutorial authority would be given to the prosecution office, separating the functions of investigation and indictment. Once the government drafts a revised bill on the prosecution reform based on parliamentary deliberations, the Standing Committee will resume discussions. Lawmakers are looking to pass the legislation by February, and all eyes are on when and how a consensus will be reached on the revision. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
And at the World Economic Forum in Davos this past Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump maintains his territorial claim over Greenland, but rules out the use of American force to acquire it. Our Lee Seung-jae covers his remarks.
President Donald Trump has signaled a major shift in his controversial push to bring Greenland under U.S. control, backing away from the use of military force while continuing to press his case diplomatically. Speaking Wednesday at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Trump reiterated his belief that Greenland, a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark, must fall under U.S. control for global and American security.
You know, when I see what's happening with Greenland, I wonder, because I want Greenland for security. I don't want it for anything else. We have so much rare earth. We don't know what to do with it. We don't need it for anything else.
Trump acknowledged that the United States could theoretically take the island through overwhelming military power, but stressed he would not do so. At the same time, Trump announced that he was canceling a planned round of tariffs on 8 European countries that oppose his proposal for Greenland. The decision followed talks with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, which Trump described as highly productive. Just days earlier, Trump had threatened to impose a 10% tariff on goods from Britain, France, Germany, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, the Netherlands, and Finland starting February 1st, with rates rising to 25% by June if no deal was reached on what he called a complete U.S. purchase of Greenland. In a social media post, Trump said he and NATO leadership had established a framework for a future agreement covering Greenland and the broader Arctic region, calling it beneficial for both the United States and NATO allies. Despite the rollback on tariffs, tensions remain high. The European Parliament formally suspended ratification of a U.S. trade deal on Wednesday in protest, calling Trump's earlier tariff threats political blackmail. European lawmakers say negotiations will not resume until those threats are fully withdrawn. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
On the K-pop front, South Korean music label HYBE's US-based girl group Katseye is slated to perform at the 2026 Grammy Awards as a nominee for Best New Artist. The group is among 8 nominees set to take the stage at the ceremony on February 1st in Los Angeles. Formed following HYBE's global audition project, Dream Academy, Katseye debuted in the US back in 2024 and gained much attention after entering Billboard's Hot 100. The group recently released its new single, Internet Girl. Over in Spain, Barcelona's historic landmark Sagrada Familia is poised to crown its highest star this year to coincide with the 100th anniversary of the death of its architect, Antoni Gaudi. Our Cha Yun-kyung reports.
The light passing through the stained glass fills the interior, leaving visitors speechless. Amid the forest light columns, it's easy to forget that construction is still ongoing.
I haven't visited often, maybe 3 or 4 times, but each time I am deeply moved. It is truly a spectacle.
All around, visitors stand still for a long time. The Sagrada Familia is no longer just a place to view. It has become a space to dwell in.
Beautiful. I sat down over there for like 15 minutes just staring and just in awe. So I love it.
The architect, Antoni Gaudi, knew that this church would not be completed during his lifetime. He saw only one of the towers finished. This space of wonder now enters a very special period this year.
June 10th marks the 100th anniversary of Antoni Gaudi's death. The year 2026 will be the year of him.
The central spire has been partially completed, and the vertical symbol Gaudi envisioned is now visible over the city. It has also set the record as the tallest church spire in the world. However, this architectural work is still ongoing, and the completion date remains uncertain. The Sagrada Familia is not just the work of a single architect. It is the result of a century of collective effort. Gaudi's unfinished designs continue to shine, even as people commemorate the 100th anniversary of his passing. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. The U.S. Supreme Court on Wednesday signaled it will likely allow Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook to stay in her job while she fights President Donald Trump's attempt to fire her. Trump previously told Cook she was fired over mortgage fraud allegations, which Cook denies. No president has ever fired a sitting Fed governor in the central bank's 112-year history. Several justices pressed the administration on why it gave Cook no formal notice or hearing, and multiple justices voiced skepticism about letting a president remove Fed officials without meaningful limits and how this could impact the Fed's independence. The court expects a decision by early summer. Meanwhile, Trump said on Wednesday in Davos that he was close to choosing a new Fed chair, adding he would prefer to keep White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett in his current role, as he called BlackRock bond manager Rick Rieder, quote, very impressive. Trump and his aides have also named Fed Governor Christopher Waller and former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh as candidates. Iranian state television has admitted for the first time that security forces killed more than 3,000 people during recent anti-government protests. Iranian state TV on Wednesday issued its first official death toll from recent protests through statements by the Interior Ministry and Iran's Martyrs Foundation. It said 3,117 people were killed, adding that 2,427 of the dead were civilians and security forces, without detailing the rest. Meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi warned in a Wall Street Journal op-ed that Iran will, quote, fire back with everything we have if it faces attack, as the U.S. Navy is currently moving the USS Abraham Lincoln Career Strike Group toward the Middle East. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang says trillions of dollars in new investment is needed to support the global artificial intelligence boom. During talks with BlackRock CEO Larry Fink at the World Economic Forum in Davos on Wednesday, Huang dismissed fears of an AI bubble, saying the opportunity is extraordinary, even if investment totals look massive. The Nvidia chief declared this is the largest infrastructure build-out in history, urging Europe and global industries to aggressively expand energy supplies and data centers to capture the technology's economic benefits. On jobs, he argued demand can rise even as AI spreads. Prince Harry fought back tears in a London courtroom on Wednesday while accusing the Daily Mail of making his wife Meghan Markle's life an absolute misery. The Duke of Sussex and 6 other claimants, including singer Elton John, are suing publisher Associated Newspapers over alleged privacy violations dating from the 1990s to the 2010s. The lawsuit alleges unlawful information gathering such as voicemail hacking, phone bugging, and deception. Associated Newspapers called the accusations preposterous smears and said its reporters relied on legitimate sources. Harry described the legal battle as traumatic, but a public duty to hold the media responsible, telling the court that intrusive tabloid tactics have only worsened since he launched his lawsuit in 2022. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Temperatures are hitting record-breaking lows day after day, and today marks the peak of this cold wave around the country. A cold wave warning is in effect for northern parts of Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, parts of Chungcheong-do, and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces. For most other regions across the country, a cold wave advisory has also been issued. Snow is still falling in areas of the west coast of the Jeollado provinces, Jeju Island and Ulleung-do, and more is expected today in the southwest as well as Jeju Island and Ulleung-do. Tomorrow morning will start off cold at -12 degrees in Seoul, -16 degrees in Chuncheon. Highs will rise to -2 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 5 degrees in Gwangju, Daegu, and Gyeongju. Looking ahead to tomorrow, snow is expected across most parts of the country, except for Seoul and the Gyeongsang-do provinces. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.
The new shopping game is starting.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea if you've signed a contract for a one room, obviously you're a pro. But the real deal begins now. Step 1. Housewarming. No need to buy toilet paper, diffusers or hand soap. You'll get them soon enough as housewarming gifts. And some are bound to pile up. There's nothing better to serve your guests than milpaeyu nabe. If you have Korean friends coming over, don't forget the extra garlic. Step 2. Garbage disposal. With great power comes great responsibility. You've had a good time, so let's get to work. It might be tempting to sweep everything into a trash can, but you have to separate your garbage. Not bothered? Beware that negligence is punished with a fine or public humiliation. Step 3. Drying rack. You're excited to live alone in Korea, but the fate of these items, hanger, storage, or a hanger. Go get fresh coffee outside. Jogging doesn't cost anything, and nothing beats instant rice. But keep one item around so that you don't get too lonely. Step 4. Pros of living alone. No mum. Cons of living alone. No mum. A new towel doesn't magically appear. You have to do the laundry regularly. If anyone gives a towel as a souvenir, take it. Get rid of mold immediately. Don't be lazy with the vacuum cleaner. Housework is an endless affair. Overwhelmed? Give your mum a call and thank her for everything she's done. Did you survive in your one room? Wait, you have an unwanted visitor. Call someone you fancy. Could be the right person for the job.
The Korean wave is drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% census rate in April. Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang. South Korea's AI Basic Act takes effect today, that is January 22nd. With more on this act and the country's race for sovereign AI on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome. You're watching Press Perspective for this Thursday, January 22nd here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. South Korea's AI Basic Act, that is in effect as of today, reportedly consolidates 19 separate AI bills into a unified framework, ranging from research funding to safety guidelines. Now, this act also comes amid a fierce race for sovereign AI here in the country. For more on this, I have freelance journalist Yang Chen-hao here in the studio. Chen-hao, welcome back.
Hello, thanks for having me on this AI day in South Korea.
Indeed. I also have Chloe Bogno with French broadcaster France 24 here in the studio. Chloe, it's great to have you here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Right, Chen-hao, we shall start with you. For the sake of context, let's begin with the competition launched by the Lee Jae-myung administration to create a new independent AI model developed entirely using South Korean technology.
So during these days, AI has all become part of our everyday lives. We use it to generate images, videos, and summarize articles and translate it into other languages. And some people rely on ChatGPT, and meanwhile others use Google Gemini. And in China, there's DeepSeek. So different AI companies offer different kinds of models, and some are designated to respond very quickly, and others are focusing more on accuracy, and some are especially good at creating images or videos. So South Korea now wants to develop its own, should I say, homegrown or its domestic one AI models. And to do that, the government itself has launched a national competition inviting companies to take part. And teams are developing their models, which are then evaluated by a review panel from the Ministry of Science and ICT every 6 months. And if a model fails to meet the standards from the government, it can be eliminated. But for the winners, the rewards are significant. They can gain access to high-end GPUs, and government-provided data sets, databases, and a chance to secure a key and potentially profitable in the future in the market. So in the last round of the competition, the AI teams from Never and NCSoft, which these both are very famous company in South Korea, they have been all knocked out. And teams from SK and LG, along with AI startup company called Upstage, these 3 companies are still in the race now, and the South Korean government is expected to announce 2 winning teams earlier next year, and the competition has been dubbed as Squid Game of AI in South Korea. And through this kind of high-stakes competition, South Korea hopes to push the local companies or enterprises to build the AI models of its own and strengthen its influence in the global AI landscape. And interestingly, after Naver's AI team was failed, the company's share price in the stock market failed, and showing that indeed many investors are closely watching or monitoring how the tech companies in South Korea perform in AI development.
Right, so this particular competition also, I believe it's a 3-year competition with the final winner to be announced in 2027. Now, Chloe, as Chen-hao mentioned, 2 competing companies were eliminated just last week. To tell us more about this, why were they eliminated?
Yeah, so as Chen-hao said, 2 companies were Naver Corporation, that's well known for operating here a web search engine, and the other one, NCSoft Corporation, is mostly known for developing video games that are multiplayer on the internet games. So why did they got eliminated? They both got eliminated for different reasons. And Naver was actually eliminated because they did not follow the main rule, probably, of the competition. That is, they used a Chinese vision encoder when it is said that the program is to build open source model from scratch using only Korean component, because it is the best way. If you're not using anything coming from abroad, it's the best way to ensure that you've got sovereign artificial intelligence model that we come back to later on. For NCSoft Corp, the reality is just that they got eliminated because their score was too low. As Chen-hao was saying, every 6 months there will be an evaluation of the program that's shown to the ministry, and depending on a lot of different variables, the lowest ranking player, let's say, is going to get eliminated. So it's interesting to see that the ministry has said that right now there are only 3 teams remaining, but they say that they're going to choose an additional team to come back into the competition because they are supposed to be 4 teams right now. And so they say that it could be either a very new player, or that could be one of the 2 eliminated teams if they are able to make up the program and make sure that they have a program that's up to date, high enough in the ranking, and made from scratch with only Korean components. So we don't really know if Naver or NC Softcorp might come back into the competition later on.
Right. And in the meantime, Chin-Hao, quite a number of pundits have questioned the logic of calling on companies to forgo open source software. What have they been saying and what have you been hearing on the ground?
Yeah, so Chloe just mentioned there's a controversy dealing with that. Should we really base on the open sources or not in this competition? If we first step away from the AI for a moment and look at the things from perspective of our everyday daily life for computer using, open source softwares has long been seen as serving the public good because anyone can access the source code and building new features or variations and then share those improvements with others. And taking like WordPress, for example, this is a blogging platform, blogging software widely used by website designers and writers, or Chromium, the open source foundation behind the Google, Explorer, Chrome. These are all based on the open resources. Some developers have used the Chromium to create browsers, other new kind of browsers based on that. And so in that sense, open source software encourages creativity and leads to a wider range of tools and services and diversity. But in the world of AI, if we now enter into the field of AI, open source have become like far more controversial. In South Korea's national AI competition this time, like Chloe has mentioned, like 3 of the 5 teams that advanced into the final round of the game were found to have used open source code from AI models, including one from China. So critics argue that relying on open source code means that the technology is not fully original, and that it undermines the idea of building a truly South Korea sovereignty AI, which means it's not being fully produced by South Korean. There are also concerns that using models linked to Chinese codes or system could pose security risks. So since this the prize which the South Korea awarded in the competition are funded by taxpayers, money, the taxpayers' money, many people argue that it is kind of inappropriate for teams to rely heavily on open source code when developing their AI models. However, in reality, the competition rules never really explicitly banned the use of open source models, indeed. And there is even a professor in the electronic engineering pointed out that in AI development, expecting every single line of code to be written entirely in-house is simply unrealistic and very difficult, and it takes time. At the heart of this debate may be a deeper issue that we are still lack of experience when it comes to an AI and the future it will shape. And that uncertainty has led to many unresolved questions, ones that even South Korean government might not even have fully anticipated when it launched the competition. So the key question remains that should South Korea aim to build an AI model that is 100% fully homegrown development, developed entirely from scratch, or should it use the existing open source code as a foundation, adding its own ideas and training models, methods to create an AI model that is truly Korean? It is a bit like tailoring the suit, because if you talk about the custom-made suits, there are made-to-measure, MTM, and bespoke. Yeah, both are custom-made suits, made to measure, adjust, and existing, templates. models to fit the customer's body, fast and very efficient. But if you talk about bespoke, it is fully handmade. It's designed entirely from scratch to fit the individual perfectly. The result is perfect, ideal, but it takes much longer time.
All right, I like the comparison. And keeping in mind this particular debate then, Chloe, what do you believe are the factors perhaps driving this desire for sovereign AI?
So let's say first that South Korea is not the only one wanting to get sovereign AI. I mean, we know, for example, France and Germany are collaborating to get it as well, because it's a key strategic imperative, actually, to be able to have your own model that's make it 100% your national AI model. So why? First of all, it would be to retain autonomy, control, and resilience. So if we think about all the artificial intelligence is going on into the society right now, it's underpinning economic competitiveness, national security, social governance. So there's quite a lot of key sectors where artificial intelligence is widely used already, and it would be already hard now to do without it or do with a limited version of it. So for example, if we take healthcare, it's used a lot in diagnosis now to have artificial intelligence that will have a look at, I don't know, different blood test results from a same person, and from the evolution will just explain to you what might be the possible reason for the changes in the blood test. There's also defense system. If we think about the army, they sometimes need to compute a lot of data from other countries. For example, the satellites, spy satellites, are showing a lot of data, and it's mostly artificial intelligence that are now computing the data. So there is this idea that if you have your own artificial intelligence, then you're not depending on another country to provide you with those kind of very key sectors, programs that are helping you. And I mean, artificial intelligence at one point is going to be like all the other elements. So for example, if we look at the United States and the tariff wars, what they did was saying the commercial exchanges were actually something that should be used to leverage and to get things that the US wanted. So we don't know if one day the countries who are making the best data, the best AI solutions might use those kind of data and stuff, saying, if you want our solution, then you need to, I don't know, give us more money or invest in our country, etc. There's also the question of resilience, because again, there's the question of if someone is providing it for you, how can you do securely and being sure that the relationship is balanced? Then there's the legal question, obviously, and that's something we're going to talk about, because today we see that South Korea is developing their own legal basic AI act. But the thing is, if you're depending on another country, and let's say that country gets a very tough regulation on AI, then your solution being developed in another country will work less, because they are not able to do whatever they need to do to make a good AI solution. And just a small last thing that Chen Hao touched upon is customization. It is well known that every AI system is developed by a certain country, and it will be developed mostly in one language with one culture in mind. So that's something that we know about, and it's always harder to train those AI systems that they will take in account your country as well and the specificities of the country. So for example, right now, if I go to one of the main AI generative video and I ask them, show me a castle, they will probably show me a European castle, not a Korean one, for example. And that's the kind of things that it's probably more of a detail, but it's still something important for the sovereign AI.
Right, for sure, for sure. Chena, beyond the phrase sovereign AI, the phrase physical AI has been making quite a bit of headlines, especially following the Consumer Electronics Show this year in Las Vegas. That being said, let's start off with the definition for the phrase physical AI, and what are South Korean companies, including of course Hyundai Motor, doing to make waves?
So for the past several years, we mainly use AI to generate some new pictures or like organize existing information, doing kind of like that kind of things. But now a new concept is what you mentioned, like physical AI is emerging this several months. Unlike a traditional AI, the physical AI doesn't just create content itself. It can sense the real world and reason about what it sees and take action through machines or robots, much like a fully human system. And with this kind of technology, AI can be treated almost like another human laborer or worker taking on tasks that human finds very difficult or very exhausting or time-consuming. So we use that to help us solve everyday problems. And at this year's CIS, many AI systems were already been displayed that can move there on and do houseworks, household chores, and complete tasks without any human assistance or reminders or instructions. And Hyundai, for example, the plans to use the robots developed by Boston Dynamics Atlas as early as coming years, parts sorting, assembly, and logistics. To carry, for example, to carry those elements and then to put that into a car, an automobile completely. So that AI-powered robot also made an appearance on CES this year. So to make this possible, developers still need to build powerful language models and massive databases and continuously train these systems so they can understand, the AI system itself can understand their environment, sense the space, and take actions on their own to solve the problems. And these kinds of AI systems usually require fast and stable internet connections, of course. And developers also have to consider, for example, how to prevent the systems from behaving in unsafe or harmful or risky ways. And none of this is easy, and the challenges are significant, but humans are already moving down on this path, and progress is continuing step by step.
Right, and perhaps because of that, Chloe, over in Davos at the World Economic Forum, business leaders have highlighted the importance of a human-centered AI future. Could you tell us a bit more about these discussions and their significance?
Yes, it was a panel discussion on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos. And it's surprising enough, actually, to think that CEO of one of the highest high-tech companies are actually discussing the side effect of AI transition and how we should be careful on the human side of things. So one of the things they said was that AI is the first technology that will actually be non-human driven. That's the expression they used. And what they say is the people who are developing it at the moment, because for now, obviously, it's still driven by human mostly. But as Chena was saying, there's this idea that physical AI, for example, will be learning by itself at one point. And they're saying that the one who are doing the development right now should keep that in mind to be sure to be careful with the unexpected direction that the AI might take. And also, they were saying that there's also the question of competition for resources that will happen because of artificial intelligence. So there will be obviously the question of getting the best internet possible, getting the best data centers, getting sovereign AI. We know it's also the question of will you have all the resources that you need for that? And obviously, the more like global competition about all the elements like the rare earth materials that are going to be needed and that are not unlimited quantities. And so that's one of the other questions that we were asking, saying that we should develop AI, but we should develop it knowing the cost for the planet. And then they were also speaking about the job impact. I feel like it's something that's being spoken about more and more. I know French media especially are really interested in the question of losing your job because of artificial intelligence. And one of the CEOs said that the pain is not in the destination, but in the transition. And what they're saying is that the companies where the people are losing their jobs right now already happening because of artificial intelligence should find ways to help them, either train them using those AI tools or should help them find another job, maybe artificial intelligence instead of stealing the job should help create new ones. And another idea that they developed and that I found was interesting in Davos, was to probably have the question of universal basic income for everyone. So that would be the help from governments. And I mean, it's interesting and unexpected in this kind of place. But I feel like it's interesting to see that already now, some of the people who are pushing and driving the AI extension are actually thinking about the fact that there might be side effects for the human that should be taken into account, because the earlier we noticed that, the better it is probably to be able to kind of smooth the transition.
Right. Prevention is always better than cure. And along with these AI advances, Chen-Hao, the challenge, of course, is how to enforce safety guardrails without slowing down innovation, of course. That being said, as I mentioned at the start of the clip, South Korea's AI Basic Act goes into effect today. Could you tell us a bit about this particular act?
Yeah, so it is the first comprehensive AI framework around the world officially coming into effect today in South Korea. The government has provided a 1-year grace period to allow companies and institutions time to adjust. And for now, the law itself is not overly complicated, and it does not yet tackle the most difficult or sensitive issues in depth. Instead, it focuses more on core principles. For example, respecting the creativity of AI technology and services providers, supporting research and development, and minimizing the potential risks that AI may pose to civilians' daily lives through safety guidelines. And one provision worth noting is that AI developers and services providers are required to clearly inform users when offering high-risk or generative AI products or services. These products must be properly labeled to show that they are powered by AI technology. However, so far it appears that many individuals and companies are still unaware, or they don't understand what this law even exists, and that suggests the government will need to spend more and more time and effort explaining the new rules to the public.
Right. And Chloe, finally, I think we have about a minute and a half left. What can you tell us about the efforts over in Europe to ensure safe AI?
Yeah, so in Europe there is an AI Act that was voted actually in 2024, but it's taking longer than South Korea to be fully implemented. So that's why they're not the first to do it. It should be in full effect in August this year. And the thing is, it's a bit of a similar approach to South Korea. Is the question of risk of artificial intelligence from minimal to unacceptable risk. And the idea is, the goal actually is to implement a trustworthy artificial intelligence infrastructure in Europe. So they want more legislation linked to it to help innovation, but also to build a real system for artificial intelligence, just like South Korea. Mm-hmm. And in exchange, obviously, there will be investment from Europe, and they have already been announcing 20 billion euros from the European Fund to build giant factories for artificial intelligence centers, actually.
All right, so we can look ahead to more remarkable advances this year as well. All right, Chloe, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Chen-Hao, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, on that note, we end this edition of Press Perspective. We return same time tomorrow for more panel discussion, this time on domestic politics and soft power. Join us then. Thank you for now.